Welcome to the Plot Point Podcast with Leslie Z.
And I'm Sara D.
We serve distilled interviews with some of the world's leading authors in just 20 minutes because we know you are busy and we are too. After all, we have books to write, cocktails to shake, and fabulous places to visit.
How do you do? Sara, good to see you.
Hi, Chris.
I'm here in hot Italy.
I love Tuscany, as you know. And where are you, Sara?
I am on the beautiful island of Nantucket.
Life is hard for the three of us in Vermont, Nantucket, and Tuscany.
We're just representing a broad audience of...
But Leslie, such a pleasure it is to speak with you and for the first time ever.
I know, it is a pleasure. I've been a fan. I follow all the Armenian stuff. We have that in common. And, I've been trying to get this project on that on forever, and we just haven't figured it out yet.
Well, thank you for all that you do. And Sara, I don't think I've seen you in person since Thriller Fest in 2024.
I know. I was telling Leslie that when I interviewed you, in addition to showing people where the exits are, which is very important, that you were telling me the story of how when you were at Amherst, where my husband also went, you were such a frequent visitor to the Smith dorms that you were on the fire escape list,
I was,
even though
yes.
it was an all-girls school, Mr. Bohjalian.
Yeah, Victoria and I have been together since we were 18 years old.
That's so great.
I know. I'm
That's
really
just
lucky.
awesome. Yeah.
When Chris was usually shimmying down a tree at 3 a.m. out of her window. Or at least that's how it
No, I had the fire escape ladders.
is. See,
That's so funny.
things most of us don't know about Chris Bohjalian. He's frequently seen sneaking into the girls' dorms. I love it.
No, I was never sneaking. I was a regular. My God, I was a regular on their meal plan.
Now, is that in any of your books? I'm just trying to think. It's not.
Amherst has appeared in my books and Smith has appeared in my books, but it isn't until
Yeah.
The Amateur that you get a lot of Smith. Thank you.
Loved it. And I looked this up, but only after I thought, is this your most personal book?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a wash, not merely an autobiographic minutia, but in downright autobiography. There is so much of me in both The Dead, Kenny Foster the caddy I caddied for summers, and in Mira Winston, the novelist who's living in a world of magical thinking and self-loathing and guilt. Also, it's worth noting that Mira Winston is also a novelist like me, with 25 books in the rearview mirror, including one about an alcoholic flight attendant and one about midwives on trial.
I loved it. I love those details in here. Is it something, this one in particular, that was brewing in you before you wrote it?
Not consciously. This is a book that was almost born instantly. I wrote it in an alchemic frenzy of 90 days. I had just published The Princess of Las Vegas. My 2025 novel, The Jackal's Mistress, was all done. And so I went into this room I'm in right now, my library in which I write. And I told no one at all what I was working on. Not my lovely bride, who has read every single one of the 3.8 million words I've published before they were published. Not my wonderful, brilliant editor, Jenny Jackson. Not any of my agents, not our amazing daughter, Victoria's, and my amazing daughter, Grace Experience. And obviously my wife knew I was writing something because I was in here every day, but she also understood that this was a novel I was keeping to myself for whatever the reason, and everyone at Penguin Random House wasn't concerned because I just published a book. My next book was done, so I think they thought I was actually, for the first time in my life, maybe just biking and swimming and running in the woods with my dog rather than writing. But on the last Monday in August 2024, I had a finished manuscript, The Amateur. I tucked it into an email, made the subject line how I spent my summer vacation, and sent it at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning to my wife, our daughter, my agents, and my editor, and they were shocked. And within 36 hours, everyone on the list had read it and said some version of, "Good God, so this is it, huh?" And they were thrilled. They
How,
were thrilled.
how, a couple questions off that. So how polished was it after those 90 days?
Frighteningly polished. Jenny Jackson, who's not merely a brilliant editor, she's a great, great novelist. Pineapple Street, The Shampoo Effect. She really had two notes of consequence. That was really it. It was ready to go into production like a month or two after I submitted it. Normally, the way Jenny and I work is I will send her and my wife maybe 90 pages of a book and say, "This is what I'm thinking of writing. What do you think?" And they'll weigh in. But not this one. And I think it's because if I told people I was writing a novel about a female version of me, a novelist who once upon a time thought she was going to the LPGA until she accidentally killed a caddy, everyone would have said, "Yeah, I'm thinking no."
Wait, so Chris, you were in this fugue state for 90 days, writing as though on fire. And then I also, you saw in your most recent newsletter, which I love, that you consider bicycling part of your creative process. So you write in what you described as a spotlessly clean office. It has to be spotlessly clean. Do your work, do your writing time, and then you go out for a bike ride. But instead of looking at that as a break, you actually look at that as part of your work. Can you tell us more about that?
I can, yeah, thank you, Sarah. I love biking, not simply because it means I can eat all I want, but I love biking because it clears my head. And I've been biking these Vermont roads for well over a quarter century, and I bike 3,500 miles every summer. So I do really get to clear my head and I think about what I'm going to write the next morning. I solve problems with narrative arcs. I deal with problematic scenes. Often I will stop at the side of the road, get my iPhone out of my cycling jersey, and either dictate or type in a scene that I'm going to write the next day. And then the next day, that's the very first thing I will work on.
Do you
But you
write
don't
every
ever
day?
get off your bicycle
I
and go back to your desk.
I do write every day, Leslie. Yeah, every single day. I write Easter, I write Christmas, before people wake up. Now my routine has changed. Um, I used to be at this desk at 6 in the morning. No more. Now that, I mean, it kind of changed just before the pandemic in 2020 when my lovely bride and I got a dog. And my big concern was that, oh, we've got this rescue dog and I'm about to desert her in March on a 3 week book tour. Well, that didn't happen. Um, and I wasn't going anywhere, no book tour. And I've got this beautiful, wonderful dog. And it's a pandemic. So instead of being at this desk at 6 in the morning, I would get up whenever Jessie, our dog, would wake me up because from almost the very first day, she was sleeping in bed between my wife and me. Um, And she would usually wake me up at 6:15 or 6:30, and we'd go for a run in the woods or a walk on our property. And if I was at my desk by 8 in the morning, that was fine. And now that the pandemic is in the rearview mirror, that routine has not changed. I get up when Jessie wakes me up, and I get to my desk hopefully by 8 or 8:30 in the morning. And that's fine. The work gets done. But yeah, Leslie, I do write every day.
Mm.
Do you have to, so like you wrote this book in 90 days, do you normally and then you say normally like write 90 pages and present it to them. Do you even have do that with all your success? You don't just talk about, hey, I've got this idea.
I don't know if I have to do it. It's a really good
You do
question.
do.
I like to do it. I mean, one of the great blessings of my life is I'm usually surrounded by people close to me who are smarter than me, people close to me who have my best interests at heart. So if Victoria or Jenny or Grace Experience say to me, I don't know if this is the one, I will
Mm.
think long and hard about what I'm doing. And I have aborted mission on at least four books I can think of over the last 20 years.
And that's having started them to some degree.
Yes, having started them to some degree and having written anywhere between 75 and 200 pages.
Wow. Does that kill you?
No,
You're the-
it doesn't. If I'm not having fun writing a book, you're not going to have fun reading that book. And if I'm not having fun writing that book, often Victoria or Grace or Jenny can detect that in the manuscript.
Mm. Do you think
Interesting.
you'll ever go back to any of them?
Will I ever go back to any of them? Great question. Yes, I think I might, and in fact, I have. You might have read my 2021 novel, Hour of the Witch.
Yep.
That that was a book that I actually began in the summer of 2001. I was on a book tour on 9/11. I was literally on the tarmac at Denver International Airport. And so after the towers fell, I went back to my hotel in Denver because clearly I wasn't going anywhere for a while. And I had with me on my laptop my novel about a 17th century domestic violence Puritan divorce trial. And I would work on it a lot during the day because it was either that or just sit in my hotel room and watch video footage over and over of the horrors. Um, and when I got back to Vermont about 8 days later, I guess, I started work on that book and realized no. Every moment I spent with this manuscript is bringing me back to that hotel room in Denver when I was far from my wife and daughter. And, years ago, years before 9/11, my wife worked on the 104th floor of Two World Trade, and I just couldn't write the book. And so I literally just took the 100 or 120 pages I had and put it in the back of a filing cabinet. And I discovered it again in 2020 in March, maybe April. The pandemic had begun, the Red Lotus had come out, and I was anticipating that my next book was going to be a safari book. But I was reading these pages about the Puritan divorce trial, and I thought, you know what? There's a book in here that I'm really going to enjoy finishing now. And so I did. Now, I made a lot of changes, including one key one. In the spring of 2020, I was drinking so much Appalachian Gap Distillery Peregrine brand gin that I thought you've got to give your pandemic booze of choice a shout out. So I renamed one of the main characters Peregrine after that booze.
Oh my God,
Oh,
that's
that's
so funny.
great.
Yeah.
So, Chris, when you about the four manuscripts that you have abandoned
Mhm.
over the 20 years, how do you know it's time? How do you distinguish persistence from stubbornness? How do you know when you need to keep, there's such a keep at it attitude of all these stories of nobody believed in it, but I persevered and I triumphed, whether versus this is just not a good idea and it's not going to work.
Um, Whenever I put a book aside, the plan isn't to return to it. Even
Mm.
that novel about Puritanism, I never anticipated going back to it. I just happened to find the manuscript after the pandemic started because I was, I guess, doing what a lot of us did at the start of the pandemic. I was cleaning I was doing like spring cleaning in a major, major overhaul, and I came across the manuscript. The reason why I don't simply shred them or burn them is because I feel this legacy moment. I mean, all my papers are stored at your husband Sarah's alma mater and my alma mater Amherst, and I feel a sort of moral obligation that if somebody down the road loses his or her or their mind and wants to write about me for whatever the reason, they should have access to even the unpublished materials. Now, I do, in my literary executor notes, it's clear that these books are never allowed to be finished or published, but they can be used for magazine or biography kinds of work.
Wow.
Chris, I know that's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about, I'm just so fascinated. I know you have before, you've mentioned it a lot about your like 250 rejections.
Yeah.
I mean, and how like
Did I
you
talk about that
even,
too much, Leslie?
no, no, no.
Okay.
And it's just, I think perseverance, there's something to it, but how do you not just go, oh my God, I really can't write, or whatever it is that you're thinking? I mean, can you just tell us about all that?
Yeah. I amassed all those rejection slips for short stories when I was in my early 20s. I was working at J. Walter Thompson, an ad agency in New York City. My wife was working at Shearson Lehman as a bond trader. And every day before work, between 5 and 7 a.m., I would write short stories. And I was sending them relentlessly to the New Yorker, the Atlantic, the Sewanee Review. And I was doing it because I got such pleasure from it. And one of the things I tell young writers all the time is write because it gives you because it makes you happy. And I didn't get up at 5 in the morning because I necessarily believed I was the next Ann Beatty or Laurie Moore or Chekhov or brilliant short story writer Scott Fitzgerald. My stories were very Scott Fitzgerald-esque, but in a bad way. He was talented. I was far less talented, especially then. I was writing and I was up at 5 a.m. because it made me happy. And I would write with fine point big pens on yellow legal pads so I wouldn't wake Victoria. And I was really happy. And I saved all the rejection slips like many young writers or aspiring writers. You categorize the rejection slips. The note card that's a 3 by 5 that says, Dear possible contributor, you suck, though they're polite, to the actual typed letter from an editor that says, I'm passing on this, but I really enjoyed what you did with X, Y, or Z. And at some point, I looked at my yellow legal pad pre-Excel flowchart with all my rejections and realized, son of a bitch, you're at 250. And that was a really good wake-up call. It didn't um, make me want to stop writing because writing made me happy, but it made me rethink how I was writing and what I was writing. And all these stories I was sending to very, very literary magazines. And I was in advertising. And I thought, Cosmopolitan publishes a lot of fiction. So I rounded up 6 months worth of Cosmos and read them really carefully to try and understand what constituted a Cosmo short story. And I set out literally with Cosmo in mind to write one. It's about a female supermodel who lives in a spectacular loft in lower Manhattan. She's really smart. She's married to a fabulously wealthy arbitrage trader, but her marriage is a little bit dicey. So one weekend, she goes out to their equally cool beach house on Fire Island on the Atlantic Ocean to see if the marriage can be saved, but instead spends the entire time playing beach volleyball. Cosmo bought it. First story I ever sold. And I learned a lot from that experience. write what not just write what makes you happy, but actually think about who's going to be reading it. Only one time has Cosmo ever had frontal nudity, and of course it's the issue that I am in, the now infamous Build Your Better Bust Breast issue my mother was so proud.
And we will be back next time with another episode of the Plot Point podcast where we interview the best of the best. Until then, we have books to write, cocktails to shake, and fabulous places to be. And remember, writing is the best revenge.